It is said that you could compose a history of Scotland based on the events that unfolded within and below the walls of Edinburgh Castle. To step through its gates is to enroll in a masterclass in Scotland's story. These are the secrets of Edinburgh Castle.
This is not just any rock. Over 300 million years ago, Castle Rock was an active volcano, much like Calton Hill and Arthur's Seat. What's left of it effectively takes the shape of a giant ramp, with the castle sitting right at its peak. What better place to build a fortress?
Bronze Age peoples fortified the top of the rock by around 900 BC, and ever since it has been a centre of power and a coveted prize. Edinburgh Castle crowns the top of the stony spine of the Royal Mile, which runs from the castle to Holyrood Palace. There is perhaps no other city in the world so dominated by a castle, its raw strength visible not just from throughout the old and new towns, but from many miles away as far as Fife. It is said that wherever there is an outcrop of rock, the Scots will build a castle on it, and Edinburgh is arguably the mightiest rock of them all.
Edinburgh is what I like to call a Franken castle. It's got elements of every era stitched together to create this wonder that we see today. The imposing gatehouse, for instance, guarded by the Scottish heroes King Robert Bruce and Sir William Wallace, is actually built in the 1880s, making it newer than many of the residences in Edinburgh's new town.
On the other side of the scale, the city's oldest building, St. Margaret's Chapel, dating from around 1130, awaits within. The Wars of Independence, the Reformation, the Jacobite Risings, the Second World War, Edinburgh Castle has seen and outlasted them all. Edinburgh has seen plenty of action. In fact, its castle is the most besieged castle in all of Britain. In the year 600 AD, 300 riders feasted in its halls before riding to do battle with the Angles, long before there was a Scotland or an England. In 1314, Thomas Randolph, Robert Bruce's nephew, launched an audacious assault by climbing the sheer rock itself and taking the garrison by surprise. It's said that Bruce dismantled the castle so thoroughly that cows wandered the rock for years afterwards. Thousands of fierce Douglas soldiers laid siege in 1445, and during the civil wars that engulfed Mary Queen of Scots' reign, the castle was besieged for over a year.
Not all attempts to storm the castle were successful. In 1715, the Jacobites attempted to take it, but the men who crafted their rope ladders were drinking in town earlier, so they made the rope ladders a couple feet too short to reach the top of the walls. Their plans were foiled, and while the Jacobites would eventually take the castle, it wouldn't happen for another 30 years.
Treasures of all kinds abound within the walls. You can stare down the barrel of Mons Meg, the castle-smashing 15th century bombard gifted to King James II that remains one of the highest caliber cannons in world history. Or take a more civilized approach and see the elegant royal apartments with its decorative unicorns, the official national animal of Scotland, and the room where Mary Queen of Scots gave birth to King James VI. The shimmering royal regalia of Scotland have been on display at the castle since 1819, a year after Sir Walter Scott, author of literary classics including Rob Roy and Ivanhoe, rediscovered them in a long-forgotten chamber. They are on display alongside the mysterious Stone of Destiny, a symbol of Scotland for over 1500 years and reminder of its Celtic roots. Of course, you can also test your nerves during the firing of the 1 o'clock gun every day except Sunday from the northern ramparts, a tradition dating back to 1861, which began as a way to help sailors in Leith set their navigational equipment to precisely the correct time.
From the 16th century onwards, the Scottish and later British royals tended to prefer the comforts of Holyrood Palace at the bottom of the Royal Mile, rather than the stark and drafty castle up at the top of it. So, the castle primarily became a fortress, rather than a royal residence as it had been for centuries, and it's primarily that fortress that you see on a visit today.
Soldiers trained here, guns were assembled, and prisoners, many prisoners, were kept. Some came from as far afield as America, from the fields of the Revolutionary War, and one of the earliest known examples of the Stars and Stripes can be found on an oak door in the castle's prisons. French, Spanish, American English, and many more languages could be heard at any given time in the prisons.
Escape from the castle was difficult, but not impossible. A local boy who grew up within its walls bragged that he would illicitly visit a lover in the old town by clambering down a crevice in the rock. All it really takes is the right motivation.
There has been no shortage of bloodshed here. One of the most infamous episodes in Scottish history occurred in the Great Hall in 1440, when the 18-year-old William Douglas, head of the powerful Douglas family, was seized and executed alongside his younger brother after being invited to the castle for a feast. This was an egregious breach of the ancient Scottish tradition of guest right, and for years afterwards the people spoke of the Black Dinner, an event so reviled that inspired the Red Wedding in George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones.
These are just some of the stories and secrets of Edinburgh Castle. And be sure to visit historyscotland.com for a wealth of history and travel guides dedicated to Scotland.